welcome. I am Pat Soldano, president of Family Enterprise USA. Family Enterprise USA promotes family businesses and their job growth in America. Very pleased to have you join us today. And I'm also very pleased to have David Rothberg, who is the chairman of the board of LATICRETE. LATICRETE is for 3 generations a family-owned company and has been a leader in tile and stone installation materials. Since day one, LATICRETE's founder, Dr. Henry Rothberg, dedicated himself to creating awareness on the revolutionary installation method and products that he invented. So again, we have David Rothberg with us here today, and David was the CEO until 2020. He has recently moved to chairman of the board. He's obviously managing the board, as well as he's very involved in building the family council for the family. And so, David, really appreciate you joining us. And I would love to have you tell us a little bit about the history of the family and the business, and of course, yourself.
Great, Pat, thank you. And to all the viewers, thank you. And thank you, Pat, for the good work your organization does. So I'm David Rothberg, and I'm a second generation family member at LATICRETE. LATICRETE was founded 66 years ago by our father and mother of blessed memory. Classic American story. Literally, my dad, who's a chemical engineer, had a lab in the basement. He had put himself through university, working at night, installing marble and tile and stone at the end of World War II. And he started to think about how to improve this 2,000-year-old method. Tile and stone were being installed the same way the Romans installed it 2,000 years ago. And so with World War II and the development of synthetic polymers, he started applying some of that chemistry and developed a product that you basically mix with sand and cement, made a super strong adhesive that was thin, shockproof, waterproof. And I like to say the reason that we're here today and all of the world is he was not only an inventor, but he also was able to tell his story, to be a salesman. So he took this new method of installing tile and stone, took it to architects, took it to contractors, and most importantly for our business model, he took it around the world. Because in the 1950s, there wasn't a whole lot of ceramic tile in an American home. Whereas if you went to Italy or Australia, Portugal, everything was covered with tile. So as people, if you've heard the story about Willie Sutton, the bank robber, he was asked why he robbed banks. You know his answer? That's where the money is. So my father developed an adhesive for tile, and he had to go where the tile was. So early part of our DNA was going around the world and introducing this new method, faster, cleaner, greener, for installing tile. And after about, I think, 1970 something, my older brother, Henry, joined the business and helped expand the sales network. And story, I went to university and then went to an MBA program. And I was headed for, I love the outdoors. I'm not a golfer, but I'm a mountain climber and kayakist. And I was headed for Alaska. And my brother Henry called and said, why don't you come back for the summer? We've got this new product selling like hotcakes. Henry was out, he's a salesperson. I'm out developing sales, but I need the inside, the factory to keep up. And so I came back supposedly for the summer. And 40 some odd years later, I'm still here. It's been a great run working with my brother. And at this point, as Pat said, we during COVID transitioned to our first non-family CEO, and I moved to just chairman. And we have 4 third generation family members in the business. Henry has 2 daughters. One is an architectural rep in Los Angeles. One was stationed in Italy, where we have a company in the tile center of the world. And she's just returned to headquarters after 2 years in Italy. And a niece in Melbourne, Australia, where we have a company in Australia. And my oldest son has been working overseas with the company in Brazil and Colombia, Mexico, and is now at headquarters as a product manager. So we have 4 third-generation family members. We're professionally managed. We have all non-family members in key executive positions. One of the things that's been very helpful and somewhat unique for a private, closely held company is we have a completely independent outside board of directors. So we're blessed with 7 outside directors. None of them are our lawyer or accountants. None of them are my relatives. And that has been super, super helpful, using their advice, their knowledge. It's helped keep things very, very, very professional. On the family ownership side, last couple of years, we started the process of developing what's called family governance. So with an outside advisor, we organize a family council. It's made up of the seniors, Henry, David, our spouses, our kids, and if they're married, the married-ins can attend. We use an outside advisor. And the goal is to develop a parallel governance to the company's governance. What we don't want is we don't ever want to see the family in the Wall Street Journal. The family members are feuding over the company. We certainly don't want someone calling the CEO and saying, why did so-and-so's kid get the promotion and my kid didn't? So you have a structure offline. We have regular meetings, quarterly meetings, and a retreat. We use an advisor where the family develops the rules for working at the company. A formal structured mechanism. If somebody, for example, a family member, doesn't think the company should be selling product in Russia. This is just an example. You don't want people calling the international president, but there's a method to, if the family agrees this is an issue, we don't want our product sold in Russia, we don't like what they're doing, a method to communicate that in an organized way through the board of directors to the CEO, so they know, in an organized way, the family's position on a call that an ethical issue. So that's an important part of what I do now. So just the scope of our business, we have about 2,000 employees, 500 of them in the US and Canada. We have 8 factories in the US and about 23 or 24 around the world. We have company offices and employees in Italy, Costa Rica, Singapore, Malaysia, China, Australia, India is a very large market. We have 4 factories in India. I'm sure I'm missing something, but anyway, so we're very comfortable. Oh, we opened a factory in Kenya, Nairobi, just a month ago.
Wow.
Oh, and Dubai is a big operation. So we're very comfortable going overseas, working overseas, respecting overseas cultures. So that's where we are.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you started overseas. As you explained, your father said that's where that's where the child was. So that's where we had to go. So that's fascinating. And if I read this right, you're actually in 100 countries and 7 continents. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we sell our products in over 100 countries, and our products are used and installed on every continent. I've even been to some LATICRETE jobs in Antarctica.
That's interesting. Well, and you have, as you said, almost 2,000 employees. What do you think in terms of those employees? How many of those would you say are kind of multi-generational employees? So dad comes to work for the business and then son comes from the work of the business. I mean, do you think you have a pretty good portion of them that are multi-generational employees in the business?
Yeah. So the oldest business is the core U.S. business, and that's where there are certainly several cases. There's a gentleman, he's probably approaching retirement now. His mother was my father's secretary. He has an important job in the international logistics. We have a lot of people send their kids here for internships, working in the lab or working in the international department. We do that we offer those first to employees, families, and then we get a lot of customers from overseas. They want their kids to learn English. And so we have good relationships with customers around the world, and they'll send their, semi-adult, their kids in high school or college to intern here. So we usually, and in addition, of course, we offer internships to the local high school and college kids wherever we operate.
Well, so I was going to ask you about that, because what we've learned is family businesses give 76% of their giving locally, which is very, very important. So if the business has to be sold or changed in some manner, not only does the family suffer and the employees suffer, but very often the community suffers. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what you do with your community and your giving in your community.
Yeah, this is a very important point, and I bring it up with employees. Our family has signed evergreen agreements. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but basically it's a commitment to stay private forever. And and I point out this is really important for our employees, knowing they'll have that stability, for our customers, knowing they'll be dealing with the same people, same company. But it's also important for the communities. And people often, as you say, don't realize that as soon as a company gets sold, the sponsorships that we do for we, for example, wherever we operate, we have scholarships for the local high school kids, usually in business and science, all the sporting teams, the internships. When local privately owned companies get taken over, sold out, that stuff disappears. So yeah, we're as I said, we're active with internships, supporting any local non-for-profit, any not legitimate non-for-profit in our communities we operate in comes for help. We sponsor it. That's part of giving back. We also send they help to, and we send people and our products. If they're building a community center or a animal shelter, we send people and products to do that.
Well, it's so very important. And we remind members of Congress of that all the time, because they forget that aspect of family business and how important family businesses are to their communities. So obviously, COVID was a very difficult time for most family businesses. What we learned is 90% of family businesses actually kept their employees employed, even though it was incredibly difficult. But this Congress has been difficult in that there's been legislation they proposed, which we've fought against, and fortunately, ultimately didn't get passed, that would have really devastated family businesses. So can you tell us, how have you been able to work with some of the legislation and tax laws, and what are the things in particular that maybe have been challenging for your family that Congress could help you with in terms of legislation?
For our family, top of mind is the issue of the so-called death tax, because as I said, we're committed to keeping it private, but it turns out that's very, 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 very difficult because of the tax laws in the United States. There's huge taxes due on my death or Henry's death, and our money is invested in the company. So they have huge taxes due, and that causes a lot of owners, a lot of company owners to have to sell. I was always intrigued. We do business around the world and do business with German companies. And I was always intrigued by, you find these 6, 7, 8, 13th generation German companies, often these so-called Mittelstand, these middle-sized private companies. And why don't we have those in the US? And what I learned is that Germany, if a family keeps the company in the business and doesn't lay off employees, there used to be no tax on the value of the company on transfer. Now I think there's a 16%, but just compare that. In the US, it's 40%.
Right.
Actually, if you live in Connecticut, where there's another 8%. And that's cash, that's tax money you have to pay, whereas a company is private company is an illiquid asset. But at any rate, so my ask if you wanted to see more community-oriented, privately owned companies that care about the employees and the communities they operate in, is something similar to this German, obviously works very well for Germany, where as long as the company isn't sold, as long as they don't lay off employees, that they can transfer the stock to family members with a reasonable tax, but not something that forces you to sell it. That's the biggest tax issue that would be could be addressed at the federal level. I mean, I have general comments about federal regulatory environment. I would love to see rather than a gotcha, catch you, a more consultative from environmental and OSHA organizations. It seems like the bureaucrats like to just put a show that they got us fine from this company or fine from that company. But if they have productive, we're all interested in safe, healthy employees. Nobody wants to work at a crappy company. So, but constructive guidance without, first time they come in saying, hi, caught you, and here's a fine. So that would be a general recommendation regarding the regulatory environment.
Yeah, that's really interesting and so important. And I agree with that. I mean, at the very least, talk to us, consult with us, and find out whether these regulations are going to devastate our business or not before you implement them. So good for mentioning that. Thank you for that. And the estate tax, you're right, is devastating. And while a lot of people think you can plan around it, there's only so much planning you can do, right? At the end of the day, you have to basically give it up in order to not pay the tax, which, as you're saying, then the family doesn't own it anymore, and that's not really a solution. So thank you for mentioning that. That's very, very important.
The other federal comments, suggestions that would be relevant to us would be just to continue or enhance so-called R&D tax credits. Okay. So we've all seen during this COVID, the supply chain problems that we don't make anything. But I learned in the middle of COVID, there is no manufacturing of penicillin in the United States. Think about that. And there's a huge, I think, a $500 million Eli Lilly plant that's closed. We don't make penicillin. We're hostage, or we can be hostage for our medical needs if we get in some crisis argument with another country. So anyway, R&D credits that would encourage, assist companies developing new products, onshoring things. That would be something that would be, I think, would be helpful for the U.S. economy. And
that's very good to know. Yeah, I would agree. I didn't know that either. That's pretty amazing. We are held hostage for a very important product to other countries. How about the income tax? Are you a pass-through organization? Are you a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLP? How do you operate?
We're a sub S, so we did not benefit substantially from the Trump tax reduction on C Corps.
Yeah. So many people have lost sight of that. And it's so interesting. As large as you are, you're an S Corp, and an S Corp's a pass-through entity. And so you're still paying 30 to 35% in income taxes. Yep. And the C Corp's corporate America gets to pay 21%. And what we learned in our annual survey is that 79% of the family businesses in America operate as a pass-through. So they're all paying these higher taxes. So to your point, the Trump tax bill, it only helped 21% of the businesses, and they are the C Corp businesses and the larger, non-family business owners in many cases.
The last thing I think of regarding your question about what I guess Congress can do that would enhance the health of our business and other businesses is in our case, STEM, so-called STEM training at community colleges and any kind of trades. We're in the construction. We make products that are used in construction, but the world and the United States need construction workers. So trade schools and community colleges, trade schools for trades, any support or increased support there would be helpful. And community colleges, specifically focused on science, technology, engineering, math. That's what America needs. And that's what adds to productivity. And we all know productivity is the only way you can, without inflation, you can increase in wages. And so if the community colleges would put more focus on STEM grads, that would be good for all of us.
Well, that's a really excellent point. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I think you're the only person that's ever mentioned that, but I can totally see why that would make so much sense. So again, thank you for that. Is there any final words that you would like to leave us with? I want to appreciate your time, respect your time on this video call today.
Just say that my family is very thankful with the opportunities that were offered. The United States has been a tremendous place, a tremendous opportunity. And it's still a great place for people to start businesses. And legal qualified immigration would be a wonderful thing to help boost the economy of the U.S. I love this system. I think Canada and other countries have this so-called points system. If we could address, this would be right up there with the big, most important things Congress could do. Develop a rational immigration policy for legal immigration. And several countries use a points system. So the more educated somebody is, the longer they've worked before they came here and all. Immigration is a wonderful thing, and it clearly would benefit the U.S. economy. Of course, this immigration thing has been going around now for decades without solution in Congress, but that would be a mega improvement. Could add, I'm sure you could probably measure full percentage points to the U.S. GDP if we had a legal qualified immigration system.
Well, again, thank you for mentioning that as well. That is a really, really excellent point. And hopefully our Congress can solve that, because it is a huge problem in this country.
Huge.
So, well, David, I really appreciate your time on the call. I appreciate all of your input. It's excellent. Definitely want to share this video with members of Congress, because I think they will finally get to hear someone that really understands and really has lived what they haven't lived in many cases. And I think they'll really appreciate your vision and your opinion on all these topics. So once again, thank you for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, David.
Pat, thank you very much, and wish everyone a good day and continued success and health.